scary stories. So this happened around a year ago. I was living in a large city in the UK, around a mile from the center. Although the area I lived in was nice, the city itself had a lot of crime. A teenage girl actually got stabbed to death on her way to school on a bus near my flat not long ago. I had just finished my university class and was waiting at the bus stop, and I'm helping a woman locate her bus on the timetable, and as I'm helping her, my bus pulls up and drives away. Just great. A man must have seen the whole thing happen because he comes over to me and says something along the lines of, "Tough luck, that's annoying." And I reply, "Yeah, typical," or something like that. Normal small talk, trying to be polite to him. Shortly after, the next bus comes along. I get on, and so does the man that I was just talking to, which I found weird as he could have gotten the earlier bus I missed. Whatever. I don't really think much of it, and I put my earphones in and continue on the 20-minute journey home. I get off the bus at a normal stop, and I'm walking along when suddenly I feel someone grab my shoulder. I flinch and instinctively push the hand away and look behind me. It's the man from before. I take my headphones out and he says, "Hey, beautiful, you got a man?" My defenses immediately go up, as I'm sure any girl living in a city will understand. I start walking and he follows me. Yeah, sorry. I'm pretty bewildered at this point. I have experienced creepers before, but not someone physically grabbing me. Nah, you're just saying that. I can tell you are lying. Come on, beautiful. Can I have your number? Me. No, I have a boyfriend. I actually wasn't lying. I did have a boyfriend. He continues asking over and over and over again, getting angrier and angrier at me. No, sorry. At this point, I start walking really fast, almost jogging. He's still following me. It's about a 5-minute walk to my flat, and he followed me the whole way back. I honestly think at this point I'm going to get attacked, stabbed, I don't know what. I have never been in this situation before, probably due to the fact I'm a 5'11" girl. Even though I only weigh 130 pounds, I have been told I look intimidating due to my height. So I get to my flat and he's followed me all the way to the doors. Luckily I get in and I shut the fucking door before he follows me and goes up to my flat. Around 30 minutes later, I go out to the balcony and look down and he's still there. Contemplate calling the police, but instead I call for the concierge and they go out and I can hear them threatening to call the police if he doesn't leave. Thankfully he does. I spent the rest of my months living there worried he was going to show up, and luckily he did not. My stomach turned recently when I heard on the news that not 5 minutes from where I used to live, and this all took place, a girl was walking home late at night and she got raped. She flagged a car down for help and got raped again by a different guy. I can't imagine the horror this poor girl went through. To any girls reading this, honestly, look into getting self-defense classes or something, especially if you live in a city. I'd really love to have karate chopped the guy in the dick, but seriously, I was lucky, and it could have ended a lot worse. I have no idea what this guy's intentions were. I don't know if he just wanted my number or if he had something more sinister in mind. Be wary with who you speak. I find with men harassing women in the street, if you completely ignore them, more often than not they will stop. If they don't, or they are getting physical, a loud noise will startle them, so you can run away. Invest in a rape alarm. Also, don't feel like you have to answer a person who is talking to you just to be polite in a situation like this. You don't owe them politeness. Your safety is more important. So this happened when I was 9 years old during the summer. I grew up living with my parents and younger sisters, and our house was situated on a cul-de-sac. At the end of our cul-de-sac, there were a row of hedges with an opening at either end that led out to a huge field that had a tennis court, a playground, and a long pathway. This is relevant for later. Everybody that lived on our cul-de-sac knew each other pretty well. There were also a few kids my age, so I spent most of my free time playing outside on the grass with them. It's also worth noting that it was absolutely forbidden for any of us to venture out beyond the hedges without an adult, because our parents would not be able to see us from their houses. So one late afternoon, there were 5 of us sat on the grass chatting. It was pretty rare for someone that didn't live on the cul-de-sac to pass through, so it caught my eye when I saw a man making his way hurriedly along the pathway closest to my house. He had a scowl on his face and stared directly at us the entire time he was walking past. There was just complete silence between us until we walked through the hedge opening, and I could tell by the other kids' faces they too felt uneasy about him. We then immediately asked each other if anybody knew or had seen him before. None of us had. It was quickly forgotten about, and soon enough, each of our mothers had called us in for dinner. Around 10 minutes after we had finished dinner, I was in the kitchen helping my mom with the dishes. Our kitchen had a large window that faced out onto the grass outside, so I was taken aback when the same guy walked past again, in the same hurried manner, with the same scowl, this time staring directly into our kitchen. He had walked past. I gasped and told my mom that weird man was staring at us earlier. She looked up at him walking past, but didn't see anything until he immediately walked past in the opposite direction, again staring at us as he walked past. I yelled, "Mom!" and pointed straight at him. She saw him and ushered me out of the kitchen, saying something along the lines of, "Don't be silly. He's probably looking for someone." I went upstairs to get washed and ready for bed, the entire time feeling a bit freaked out by him. From then onward, I started spotting him at least weekly standing outside our local places, such as the post office, our local convenience store, etc. Each time I saw him, he was alone and not really ever doing much, just standing and looking around. I was always in my mom's car when I saw him, so I just ducked and kept out of his vision whenever I saw him. There were no more direct encounters, so I figured he was probably new to the area, and over time my nervousness of him lessened. Fast forward to winter. I was at school and playing on the playground during our lunch break. Towards the top end of the playground was a padlocked gate that was about 8 feet tall and about 4 feet wide. It was rarely ever used, so it caught my attention when my vision raced past the gate and I caught a shadow standing there. I did a double take, and it was the man. He was pressed right up against the gate with both hands leveled, with his head gripping the bars, staring straight at me. I freaked the hell out and started screaming and hysterically crying, and made a run for it into the school building. One of the lunchtime supervisors, who also happened to live with her kids on our cul-de-sac, saw what had happened and took me straight into the nurse's office. The head teacher, along with a few other teachers, were called into the room and asked what had happened. I was too panicked to say anything outside of, "The man is out there." So the playground supervisor neighbor took over and explained to them. She said she had spotted him a few times on our cul-de-sac and had a bad feeling about him, and had told her kids not to talk to him. The teacher went to another room to look at the footage of the security camera placed on the side gate. After a while, they came back to the nurse's office and decided to call my parents and the police. The decision was made for my parents to pick me up from school early so the police can come to our house and take a statement, and because I was a hyperventilating wreck. On the car journey home, my mom told me that the teachers had said the camera footage showed him standing at the gate and then sprinting away, which they figured was because I started screaming and crying. She said it was a good thing because I scared him away, but I was bright for my age, and I knew she was saying that only to comfort me. We meet the two police officers at our house, one female officer, one male officer. They are very friendly and make me feel at ease. Whilst they are asking me all of the relevant questions, they then asked me to describe what he looked like. But being so young, I could only say that he was white, tall, with short brown hair. They pressed for more information, such as tattoos. The only thing that come to mind, that he looked like Dan Sullivan from EastEnders. This was met with instant laughter from both police officers and my parents, with the female officer commenting, "Wow, he must be quite good looking." As soon as she said this, my heart sank. After a while, the police had wrapped up the statement and told us to notify them to any more occurrences with this man. I was grateful for their help, but I could not help but feel like I wasn't being taken seriously by the adults. After this, I stopped seeing the guy around town, and the kids on our cul-de-sac say they don't see him either. Life goes on, and gradually, I regained the confidence to play outside again, both with friends and by myself. A year and a half later, I'm 11 years old, and it's the summertime. My parents had gone away on holiday, so my grandma and my aunt were staying at our house, looking after me and my younger sisters for the week. They were a lot more lenient than my parents and would let us play out for longer. And they even let me play over at the tennis court beyond the hedges. It was around 6 p.m. and was still light out, and I was racing my bike up and down the long path situated in the middle of the large field. I had completely worn myself out, and I was on the part of the path where it forks off near the tennis court, so I just sat on my bike for a while trying to catch my breath, while watching a group of people further down on the field playing cricket. Next thing I know, I hear somebody quietly but loud enough for me to hear it say, "Hey." I looked around, and I could not see anybody close enough that I would have been able to hear. I then hear a whistle, which leads my eyes directly over to an alleyway sandwiched between the hedgerow and the tennis court, and I recognize it to be the man from when I was younger. The sheer shock of seeing him again completely froze me up. I could not move. He steps out of the alleyway with one hand over his crotch area. He then uses the same hand to gesture me to come over, and it's then that I see the top button of his pants and his fly undone. I accept the very worst is most probably about to happen, and I instantly go into panic mode. I know that I need to get to safety ASAP, and I figured out my options. The first option is to head straight down the field to the group of people playing cricket, but I don't know these people, and I don't know if I can rely on them to keep me safe from this man. My second option is to ride my bike as fast as I can down the path past the tennis court, around the corner, and into my cul-de-sac. However, the man is in the alleyway, and if he ran through it, he would easily beat me to the hedge opening to block my way, or catch me if he wanted. I started pedaling like a madman and decided to head to my cul-de-sac. As I turned the corner, I see that he isn't at the end of the alleyway yet, so I bomb it through the hedge opening. I hear him running and saying, "Just come here." So I race down the pathway and make it to my house. The entire time I'm shouting for my grandma and aunt, and the kids playing out on the grass figuring something is up and ask what is wrong. I ditch my bike outside my house, go inside and lock the door, and I find my aunt in the kitchen. She's panicked and asked me what's wrong. So I explain everything as fast as I could and say we need to call the police. The next thing I know, I hear the kids outside yelling and screaming "go away" and calling for their parents. We look outside the kitchen window, and the man is walking past our house looking at me dead in my eyes, completely undeterred by the commotion outside and my aunt standing next to me. He walks out of our line of vision, out of the cul-de-sac and down the road. My aunt tells me to quickly come with her in her car to follow him, so she can at least see if she can follow him to where he lives. I get in the car and sit in the passenger footwell, out of sight. After about 4 minutes of driving, she brakes and asks, "Is that him?" I poke my head up. We are literally outside of one of my best friend's houses. He's standing at an old beaten-up telephone booth that hasn't worked all the time I've known it to be there. He's holding the phone to his ear, but it isn't saying or doing anything. To his right are 3 girls, a little older than I am, sat on a bench chatting away. Oblivious to the man stood silently at a public telephone that doesn't work. My aunt parks her car and says she's going to sit and watch and make sure the girls are okay, and tells me to stay down. After no longer than a minute, my aunt says these girls are getting up, so I poke my head up again, and I see them go on their way. Suddenly the man literally just drops the phone and turns around on the spot to face the girls. Before he can even take a step out of the telephone booth, my aunt starts honking her horn and opening her door to yell at him to go away and leave the girls alone. I see him completely freak out and make a break for it up an alleyway, with which has 2 exits. The girls turn around and try to figure out what's going on, but my aunt pulls away and was headed over to one of the alleyway exits. My aunt tells me to get her phone from her bag to call the police. We get to exit number 1, but he is nowhere to be seen, so we head to exit number 2. Meanwhile, the policewoman on the phone says she is sending for a patrol car to the area and another to our house, so we can give a statement. We get to exit number 2, and again we can't find him anywhere. We decide to head home to meet the police, where I give another statement. The police officers sent this time around take me much more seriously, and after the statement was given, they said they will also spend some time driving around the immediate area looking for the guy. From then on, I did not see the man at all, and nor did my friend. We did not ever receive any type of update from the police, so I never knew what came of the investigation. The situation ended up with me being super protective and paranoid over my younger sisters whenever they were playing outside unsupervised. And I worried that if they were caught up in the same situation, they might not have been as lucky as I am. So scary, weird guy, let's not ever meet again. 15 years ago, I had the misfortune of meeting Dave. I was new to riding the bus, and when my first day came, I hopped on and took a seat towards the front. I didn't happen to know anyone on the route and sat by myself with headphones in, rocking some now classic Good Charlotte. Back then, I didn't get much attention from the opposite sex, but I could feel eyes burning into the back of my head. I turned a couple of times to look behind me, and that's when I saw Dave. He had light eyes, brown curly hair, and quickly looked away every time I caught him staring. This went on for about a week before he finally said something to me. He told me I had nice hair, and he liked my band t-shirts. He asked right off the bat if I would be his girlfriend. I said absolutely not. I did not even know him, and his creepy staring made me so uncomfortable. He brushed past my quick no and told me there was a newly instituted hug toll that needed to be paid before getting on and off of the bus. I stared at him as he blocked the center aisle and gave him a half-hearted, one-armed hug. I know. Why would you hug the guy when you felt like he was a creep? Well, I had pointed him out to a few people in school, and everyone I talked to said that he was the nicest person they had ever met, and just a bit of an odd duck. Back then, I was worried about hurting everyone's feelings or being seen as rude, so I went with it. I have brothers on the spectrum, maybe he was too. Next thing I know, Dave had joined my photography classes. My after-school programs, I saw him around every corner, and in every hallway of the school. He started popping up from behind things to try and hug and tickle me. Meanwhile, everyone just kept going with the chorus of "he's a super sweet guy" and just an odd duck bullshit. When I found out he was telling people I was his girlfriend, I knew I needed to put my foot down. It was around this time I became unwilling to pay the hug toll and feed his delusions. That's when things really took a turn. Suddenly, anonymous notes were popping up in my locker. Most of the notes said "always" and nothing else. Some had longer declarations of love, but the "always" ones got me the most. The simplicity of the message gave me chills. Always. I knew it. I knew it had to be Dave. My suspicions were confirmed when pictures of me began showing up along with the notes. The pictures were all taken from a slight distance and clearly without my knowledge. They were black and white and developed on the same type of paper we used in photo class. I knew it had to be Dave. Who else would be doing this? I finally got scared one Saturday afternoon as I was watching TV in my bed. I heard Dave's voice next to my bedroom window. He said he watched me walk home one day to see where I lived and wanted to stop by for a visit. He said he knew I wouldn't let him in, so he just figured he'd just stop by my window to talk. How he knew which window was mine was a thought that chilled me even more. The way this was escalating, I knew I needed to get an adult involved. My mom thought I was exaggerating. He was just young and infatuated and hormonal, according to her. She acknowledged the notes and the pictures as weird, but nothing other than some serious infatuation. So I went to an instructor at the school I knew and laid it all out on the table. Mr. K had also had Dave as a student and noticed some of his quirks and obsessive behavior and didn't doubt my story for a moment. He spoke to Dave's guidance counselor, and they both sat down with Dave, and I assumed told him he was making me uncomfortable and to stop. This pissed Dave right off. He stormed up to me in the lobby of the school with a glass rose in his hand and threw it at the wall behind me. It shattered, and he screamed in my face about how I had broken his heart, just like the rose. A few teachers broke up the situation. A few days later, he dropped out of school, and I went 8 years without seeing Dave. 8 years later, I was craving some mac and cheese, as one does, and hit up a popular spot in town to grab some to go. I looked behind the counter, and there's Dave. I had no idea he was working there and debated leaving for a moment. I decided to stay in line to get my food. High school was so long ago. I hadn't heard from him since that day in the lobby. Surely this guy could not still have this obsession with me. It was a huge relief when another register opened and a young woman could take my order. I wondered if maybe he was even mortified and didn't want to interact with me, and had her open. Wrong again. He seemed to take my visit to his work as a sign that I was ready to love him. At least, that's what I've been told since. I got a friend request from him that night and immediately deleted the request. A few nights later, I'm getting home and walking across the street when I see that someone is standing on the side of my house, opposite the door, in the shadows. I haul ass into the house, lock everything, and watch. It's so dark out. But I turn on the lamppost out front and hope to God I was just imagining things. Then I see him. He slinks from the side of the house, trying to stay in the shadows, and runs across the street and towards the house he grew up in. Unfortunately for him, I saw his stupid curly brown hair. I called the police and reported this, but of course, there wasn't much they could do. There was no proof he hadn't approached me or tried to get in. It couldn't be proven it was him. They did agree to keep someone on lookout in the area, and I saw police patrolling more than usual the following nights. Eventually the police patrol died down, and that's when the late night knocking began. I could hear it softly on windows and occasionally on the door, but never dared to answer or get close enough to look. It wasn't every night, maybe 2 or 3 nights a week. The police never seemed to be close enough in the area when it happened to catch him. A couple of weeks after the knocking began, I received an envelope wedged into my screen door. It was full of the creepy, candid pictures from high school, and another note that said always. I had enough and didn't know what to do. I went out to my car to drive everything down to the police. I don't care if I couldn't prove it was him. I just wanted to have some official record of what was happening to me. That's when I saw the word always carved into my back bumper. I lost it, breaking down in heavy sobs as I drove to the police station. Again, all they could do was take a report. But I decided on another course of action. In my rage, I took a picture of the police station sign and of the report being filed. I sent them to Dave over Facebook Messenger. I told him to leave me the hell alone, that the police were involved and he didn't want to ruin his life this way. He simply responded, "You're right," and disappeared. I have since heard he stalked a widow shortly after her husband had died, pounding on her windows and doors, trying to break in, until she screamed out of a top window that she was calling the police. I can only begin to imagine how she felt trying to grieve her husband and deal with Dave's obsessive ways. You may now find yourself wondering if the mac and cheese was worth it. The answer is no. Dave, let's not meet again.